All right. It says we're live. It takes like a second or two to get going, so it's going to cut in with me talking right here. But we are live for the first ever episode of the Strangeville Stinkshow web show.
Live.
My name's Kevin.
My name's Brad.
And you guys, if you're watching my channel, you probably already know who I am. Brad's my buddy. We've known each other for
don't know who I am.
We've known each other for a long time, but not really. We have a strange, a weird friendship, and we'll talk all about it here on the Strangeville Stinkshow web show whenever we want, because we're going to try to do. We've decided that using the power of the interwebs, we're going to join the party gang.
We're trying to use the power.
We work on comics every day. I'm doing my comics, and Brad's doing his comics. We aren't collaborating on a comic book yet, but he is doing his series, and I'm doing my series. And we just sort of sit around and draw comics all day, and we watch other guys do web shows where they draw comics all day on the YouTubes. And we decided that as much as we don't want to, we should probably jump in and introduce ourselves to you guys. Let you guys watch our day-to-day struggles as we create underground indie comics. And
weirdo stuff.
Yeah, this is the real fringe weirdo stuff. You guys are, if you come around from the Twitterverse or from the YouTube comics verse, you might be used to watching guys draw superhero comics or drawing weird like young adult comics. We're doing the weird. This is the throwback to the like 60s and 70s underground comic scene. We're doing the raw weird.
I always call it butthole comics.
Butthole comics.
I draw butthole comics.
There's no better description than butthole comics. You know what I used to call my movies when I was heavy into production on the movies? I used to call it butthole comedy.
There you go. See, that's what my mom's real supportive of everything I do, and she'll come over and see my stuff, and show it to her, and I'm always like, I'm also sorry. I'm sorry, Mom. It's not your fault. You did great. You know.
You did a great job, Mom. These failures are all mine.
It's not you.
I accept full responsibility for these failures.
Yeah, I love you, and I am sorry.
All right. Well, I've got my setup here today. To where you can sort of see my my work, and I'll get into that. But you guys pretty much probably know everything you need to know about me, and I'll do my fair share of talking and going through my process and showing you guys all my materials and all that. But in this first episode, I'd really rather get to know Brad, for you guys to get to know Brad more. So we were just talking.
To get to know Brad too.
Yeah, Brad's gonna get to know Brad as we do this show. Things might get a little weird. So we were talking right before we went on the air that you just got this brand new setup, and we were sort of peeping it out. You got this is all your work behind you, right? Or is that a bunch of different artists?
No, I think it's all mine back there. I've drawn pretty much since I was a little kid. I had just pretty much am like a chronic doodler. And
I'm a chronic something, but it ain't a doodler.
Well, it's a diddler. I think it's
I'm a chronic diddler.
But some of that stuff back there is probably over 10 years old.
Here, I'm gonna lock on your camera so that we just see this stuff. Okay. Now me taking drinks of water and shit aren't gonna interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's just little bits of it. But
yeah, it's a cool setup, dude. I've been to your house before. I've never seen that. I was like, what did he do? Like, put a poster up behind him on his couch?
I completely moved.
No, this is way. Obviously, I'm in my office, but your setup looks more professional than mine. That's what we were talking about right before we went on the air. I was like, dude, you look like you're about ready to tattoo for the day.
Yeah, well, you can't tell, but I'm actually sitting on the toilet.
There you go. And you told me that you had to get your supplies and materials ready for the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, I woke up, my wife was like, do you have all the stuff you need to take back? And I was like, yeah, I think I do. And this is when you know that you got like a table with these big ears on it. because you might need these, and then couple monster toys, and a bag of rocks, you know. And then this Buddha dude that my son got me, and I always keep around whenever I'm doing, you know.
It's like, it looks like
positive art of Buddha. You know?
It looks like a statue of you.
That's what I think. My son was like, hey, Dad, I was at the flea market, there's a statue, and got it.
It's a statue of a fat man.
Yeah. So that should get you through the day, you know?
Absolutely. I would put those ears on my penis and send pictures to women.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
I look like an albino gonzo.
Those are very large ears. They would make my penis look so small.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my balls already do that.
So let's talk, brother. Let's talk about why are you making comics, dude?
I kind of started making comic books on like accident. I just drew every day, and it's like, what do you wind up doing with it? You know. You can only paint so many pictures to your walls before it's like I gotta do something else with this. And I talked to you, and you kind of reconnected. I talked to you in a long time, and then I found you on Instagram, and you were making a comic book and
on that grind.
Yeah, and it's weird because like a month or so before I talked to you, because I made a puppet show on YouTube called Life with Riggs. And I thought about turning it into a comic book, and then I talked to you on Instagram, and you were making a comic book, and it just kind of seemed like maybe I should just make a comic book. So I started doodling all the time. It was like the characters were puppets, so I didn't really know how I just started drawing them a whole bunch, and kind of got comfortable with how they looked, and then just came up with a little story and started kind of pounding on it, not knowing at all what I was doing. And right now I think I'm like 5 pages away from finishing the book, but I still don't really know what I'm doing. Just closer to finishing the book, you know.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I do my thing. Is I just whether it be movies or writing fiction or comics or whatever it is that I'm doing, podcasts or audiobooks. I've done all kinds of dumb shit, and I always just throw myself into it. I think the best way to learn and to hold yourself accountable so you finish is to fail spectacularly publicly. You know, my first couple of movies are god awful, but I don't shy away from them. I still sell them. People buy my early stuff specifically because of how raw and untalented it was. And then you can see my evolution and how I learned from my mistakes as my movies go along. And the comic books will be the same way. Like this comic book, just from the first issue to the third issue is going to grow a lot. But from comic to comic, I'm going to have learned so much about the art of draw. You know, it's weird to say the art of art, but there's so many different
the art of art. Yeah,
the aspects that go into illustration, and especially sequential illustration, like how to tell a story visually through the comic book method. It's an art form that utilizes the same principles as other forms of art, but it has its own distinct rules that you can follow or you can break in certain ways that help to tell your story visually. And, you know,
when I started making this book, I think you even asked me a bunch of times in the beginning, like, how long is it going to be? And all I could ever say is, like, until it's done.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you didn't outline it or anything. You just started drawing page after page after page, right?
Yeah, I just honestly, I kind of got my story. I wrote a script and then kind of just woke up every day and looked at the script and made a page based off of wherever I was in that story. So it was kind of like a freestyle, I guess. You know, just wake up every day and read a little bit and try to put together a little bit and try to put together a page based on where I was. And then the next day move on. The last 6 pages of this book, though, I did sit down and I think that next issue I'm going to do that for the whole book, though, because it just gives you like a like, I don't know. I think everybody creates differently, but for me, it's like when you have a project and it's easier to see the progress that you're making in it, other than just like wake up, freestyle another page, and don't know where it will end. It's kind of easy to get like overwhelmed with like what if you start to feel like what if this goes on forever.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like penciling it all out. It's kind of cool because then you can see, all right, I did this, and you get to watch you kind of like chip away at the because a comic there's a lot. I never really thought about it, but when I started thinking about making this, I started looking at a bunch of different comics, and I'd be like, man, there's like 800 pictures in this thing, and then you start thinking, I don't know, man. I just never really thought that like some poor bastard was sitting at a table drawing every single individual one of these pictures. But
yeah, it's like anything else. It's overwhelming when you look at the big picture, but it really comes down to one panel at a time.
Yeah,
and
and
you
I
draw them
think
till they're done.
You told me from the beginning like how important like a workflow system is, and it is like because you can start to like systematically work, chop it down, and it makes a big difference. As at least I guess it depends on how you work creativity, like with your what way you create. But for me, I like to be able to see that I'm getting somewhere.
Yeah, for a lot of people, especially amateurs, people that just do art or drawing, um, music or whatever, it all kind of comes from the same theories kind of drive uh, pretty much all forms of art. There are people who believe that the only true like pure way to create art is to do it when you feel like it, and it's real random and chaotic. And people like that, they can create they can create great art that's very passionate, and you can see their emotion in that art. But a lot of that, when you choose to go that route, a lot of people that do that, they don't ever finish anything. They just have
another
hundreds
thing,
or thousands.
as like life goes, like sometimes for me, if I'm gonna get something done, I have to use the time that I have available to do it, whether like I feel the most creative in that moment or not. Like,
Well, I think one of the biggest secrets of creating anything is that the act of creation puts you in the mood to create. So for
yeah.
me, it doesn't matter what mood I'm in when I walk through the office door. When I sit down, and I have been in rotten moods, just pissy moods, where the last thing I wanted to do was pick up a pencil and draw dicks. But the minute I start drawing those big juicy testicles,
Yeah.
it throws me right into it. And then 5 hours go by, and I've got all my work done for the day.
Yeah, I was just
It doesn't
saying, I
matter
think
what mood I'm in.
like setting is important. Like if you have a space that just seems like that's usually where you do your thing, then sometimes when you go in there, it just kind of clicks. Like
Yeah,
it just kind
and
of
you can't overthink it. You can't like walk in the door and be like, okay, now do I feel like it? It's like that's not how it works. You go in and you do your work, and then and then it's like tricking yourself. And I used to tell writers this too, because I know a lot of writers that never finish anything, and they always overthink it. They sit down at a computer or a typewriter, or sit down with a pen and paper, however they choose to write, and they think that it's this romantic feeling that somehow they become overwhelmed with the euphoria of being a writer, and that's just not how it works. Your hands cramp, your back hurts, you're thinking about girls, you're
some of
whatever,
the most
thinking about how you can't pay rent.
some of the most like talented and creative people I've ever known in my life can't like use it. They can't like channel it
Right.
enough to ever be able to really do anything with it. And another thing I see with
Yeah,
a lot of people I know that are really talented, they either deal with that, or they deal with that they can finish things, but they're so like they fear that people won't like their stuff so much they'll never show anybody what they do.
yeah, that fear, it drives a lot of people. Again, a lot of writers and a lot of artists and a lot of filmmakers. I know guys that have shot hours and hours and hours of film, and then they never edit the footage together and finish the movie. And you're talking about wasting the time of all the actors, the cinematographers,
Yeah,
all those people that were involved in making the movie. And then the fear of the filmmaker, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of being told they're not good enough, freezes them and prevents them from ever actually finishing a project. Here's the go ahead.
When I was younger, that was a big thing that I dealt with. I drew stuff all the time, and I used to play in bands, and I used to do all this different stuff, but I always was kind of closeted about all of it. Like I never really shared very much of it, but I don't know what happened, just something like shifted in me mentally in the last probably like 5 years. I just kind of, I don't know what it is. Almost just more of kind of like this is what I like to do, and if people don't like it, like I don't force anybody to look at anything, anything I do, and so I just kind of started slowly, like dwindling things out there, and now I don't really. Now I don't really think about it too much. I'll make a picture, or I'll make anything I make. I don't mind sharing it, but it does take like for me it was like baby steps to get to where I felt comfortable sharing stuff like that.
Yeah, but once you go over that cliff, man, you realize, hey, this ain't so bad. Having somebody telling me I'm a piece of shit.
Stop showing us stuff. We get it. You draw.
Yeah, well, that's my secret was I knew that I wasn't very like I said at the beginning of this. My whole thing is if I put it out there publicly, then I'm accountable for it. I have to finish it. If I say I'm going to have a movie out in June and I don't have a movie out in June, that makes me feel worse than if I put a movie out in June and people say it sucks. Because art is subjective. And
I say, dude, one of your greatest like strong points is your work ethic, dude. You really stick to what you grind that shit out, dude. That's like
that's why, like I said, the feeling for me, the feeling of being told you said you were going to do something and didn't do it is way worse than the feeling of some asshole telling me I suck. Because art is subjective. I don't give a fuck if you don't like it. I like some of my favorite genre of film is the shittiest, crappiest, worst movies. Worst, crappy B-horror movies with the shittiest looking monsters and the worst acting. And for somebody to sit and tell me, like, well, that sucks. I'm like, it might suck to you, but it gives me more joy than watching any blockbuster in a movie theater.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as they always say, like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. That's what it is. Like, some people look at the Mona Lisa
ugly art.
And they're like, that thing's beautiful, and other people look at the Mona Lisa and they're like, that thing's garbage,
Yeah. And for me, I've just always loved ugly art. The uglier, the fucking better. And
I remember when I was like a kid, my dad would have all these old hot rod magazines, and I would see like Big Daddy Roth art in a lot of those. And I remember that was like the first art that I ever saw that I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on with that stuff, but it's so rad, It's all these.
Well, you come at this with a whole different head trip, right? Your dad's an artist.
Yeah. My dad's he's a pretty gnarly artist. Honestly, he was when he was young. He has some vision issues now that don't really let him draw the way that he used to. But yeah, he's a pretty gnarly dude. My dad's a pretty cool guy. Definitely overall a big influence on a lot of the art that I love today. I know about because of my dad. Like he's a pretty rad dude.
Most people that I would say most people, just my opinion, that sort of get into indie rock or underground comics or underground film or anything like that are mostly like rebelling against the like authority figures in their life, their parents, their teachers, the cops in the asshole cops in their small town, shit like that. But for you, you actually, your inspiration is your father, and for me, that's like the last thing I could say. So we're coming at it from two different directions, and I think that's cool that I'm the only person in my family that does this. I am such a fucking black sheep. Yeah. I am so far off, out of pasture compared to anyone else in my family.
Really, both my parents, like they're not married anymore or nothing, but both my parents' whole mentality with me and my brothers is that they just want us to be happy. They don't really care. They want us to be, they don't, like if I'm happy being a meth head, they don't want that, but they want you, as long as what we're doing is, like not bad, not harming any. You know, they're never gonna my parents would never care what like we chose to do as long as it was not, you know, something that any normal person wouldn't want you to do, you know? Like if I grew up and wanted to be like a ballet dancer, both my parents would have been like, get it on, you know? Like they wouldn't have cared what I wanted to ever do as long as I was happy and enjoyed what I was doing, you know? But
yeah, that's great.
both of my parents honestly have an artistic kind of like my mom doesn't really draw or anything, but my mom always like loves music. And just the other day, my mom came over and is trying to get me to make her some stencils to paint on some of her stuff. So my mom's kind of like a hippie spirit. My dad's an old metalhead, you know. So.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. So let's talk a little bit about how like we're from the same town basically. It's a little cluster of different little tiny towns with like 10,000 or 12,000 people in it, but basically it's one the Metro East St. Louis area is in Illinois is pretty much the pretty much one big, you know, cluster of towns, and we live in different towns, but they're basically
like,
the same.
Yeah, it's the same town with different names. Pretty much, like
yeah, and I don't really want to. There's a lot of people on the internet that don't like me, so the less we sort of get into specifics, the better. Like we can keep it vague because there's people that are going to look for opportunities to give us trouble. So yeah, there's no don't put your home address out there is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
But well, let's talk about how we met because it's pretty weird. Our story's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think I met you. I think that we've known each other since I was like probably like 15 or so. It's probably one of the first times I remember hearing your name.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not only am I kind of a black sheep way off pasture in my family, but in this area also there's not very many. There's more today. Like it's way more like the art world is way more accessible to anybody today than it was back in the mid 90s when I was like a teenager and I was doing my thing. I mean, the whole town was a bunch of metalheads and stuff, but I kind of took it all really far with like crazy multiple facial piercings and tattoos, and I really went like I had
like you had piercings all over your face at one point.
Yeah, I had the biggest I got my septum was, I think it was a 4-gauge septum ring, and I had big gigantic half-inch gauges in my ears before pretty much anybody else. Before that, because that stuff really started to take off in cities in the late 90s, but it didn't really hit rural America.
It didn't hit the cornfields
didn't hit the cornfields and the meth houses till
right.
Probably the mid 2000s, because you couldn't work anywhere. Like if you had gigantic tribal earlobes, nobody would hire you. And
chronically unemployed. Yeah.
No, well, for me, yeah. If anyone did that, they were chronically unemployed. For me, I had the reason I was able to express myself in that way was I was able to get a job at a porn shop when I was 19.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, I don't know if I should mention that. You know that I remember you working there, but I remember that you worked there.
Yeah,
you guys also sold like CDs and stuff in there, not just porn.
Yeah, and tattoo magazines and hot rod magazines and stuff like that.
That was a really cool little shop back in the day.
Well, it wasn't, but it was at the same time. Like the guy that ran it was a complete douchebag, but we were able to.
I was only a customer, so for me, I always liked it there. You know,
we were able to come to a compromise where I was able to have what I wanted in the store, and he was able to have what he wanted in the store, and we just sort of coexisted in that way. Because I started managing his stores by the time I was 20, and
I remember you'd be in there pretty much any time I went in there. You were in there.
Yeah, well, I've always had this work ethic. I worked 6 days a week at the porn shop back then, and I probably spent 70 hours in there. Time when I was on the clock or off the clock, I was in there trying to make it work. And that's one of the reasons why the guy hired me. Like he popped a porn shop up in our little town for God knows what reason he came over here. But as soon as I heard there was a porn shop there, I was like, that's where I'm working. And I went in there and the guy was like, who is this fucking douchebag. Anyway, this isn't a story about my childhood. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that guy didn't give a fuck what I did with my body, so I just got tons of tattoos and facial piercings and did all kinds of crazy shit, and he didn't give a fuck. So I had kind of an infamous reputation around our little small towns from a pretty early age. That's all I was trying to get at. So pretty much everybody knew who I was.
I worked at Pizza Hut when I was a kid, and I had a couple tattoos on my forearms. And they'd make me wear these giant bandages on my forearms, and I remember even being like, "So you'd rather me look like I have some sort of open sores on my arms than just a tattoo?" You know?
I swear to God, dude.
Like, why would that be better if you go into a store and like the guy that's cooking your food has like giant wound wraps all over his arms? You're like, well, at least he's not tattooed.
I swear to you, dude, I went through a Taco Bell 2 nights ago, and this girl in the drive-thru had about 7 Band-Aids on her neck. And I was like, at this point, there's no way to know if those are open sores or if they're tattoos.
Or maybe there was some sort of vampire activity, you know?
That is exactly the thing that went through my head. I was like, that asshole manager on duty would rather her look like she got attacked by wasps. like a wasp nest fell on her head than have those tattoos. And maybe they're bad. Like maybe they're gang tattoos all over her neck. Who knows? But in 2019, you can pretty much have any piercing and any tattoo and people don't care.
No.
Most places you go don't give a shit. You can go to Walmart and the guy will look like a tattoo artist that's stocking shelves.
I mean, unless you just do something ridiculous, like don't get like a terrible, like the word cunt on your forehead or something, you know? But as long as you keep it within.
Why does Brad have a Band-Aid on his forehead?
Right.
I thought Walmart
constantly wear like one of those 80s aerobic headbands around my.
Yes. Anyway, dude, we're off base here.
We're usually off base, you know.
How'd we meet?
I really have no clue. I was thinking about this a while back, like who we met through or why we know each other. But I know that we've just we have a long relationship of running into each other and being like, hey man, what's going on? We need to get together sometime. And then like a few years later, it happening again and again and again.
Right.
Pretty much.
Now here's my first memory of us hanging out is bizarre because I have no idea why you were there or in what fucking context you were even around me. I used to have an apartment and my buddies would come over and there's a park down the street and across the street from the apartment. And this was like 1999. And I was, so this dude comes in the porn shop with a black plastic bag full of MMA tapes and asks if we'll buy them. And they were all like recorded. You know what I mean? They weren't the originals. They were dubs. And I was like, we don't buy dubs, but dude, this looks awesome. What is this shit? And he starts going into all this Hoist Gracie and UFC. He starts going into all the he starts explaining what MMA is and everything. And I'm like, that sounds fucking awesome. I want to watch those. And he tells me like, how about I just leave this giant bag of like 50 dubbed MMA tapes with you and I'll come back and get it in like a month after you watch them all. I didn't know who the fuck this guy was. He just walked into my porn shop and I was like, oh, that'd be rad, dude. And I took him home and I start watching them. And it turns out I have a buddy that like subscribes to Black Belt magazine. And he's known what the UFC is forever. Because UFC 1 was like 1994, wasn't
it? Yeah, somewhere around there. I think.
So this is like 5 years after MMA has established itself on the pay-per-view circuit. But I'm watching these tapes from different organizations. But plus, there's every year. I think there were only maybe 10 UFCs by this time, and they were crazy. They were all in the bag. So I watched UFC like 1 through 10, and then I watched these other organizations, and there were guys that would like cross over, like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys would fight in other organizations, and then I like got into this culture of MMA where I learned who like Jean-Jacques Machado was and who the Gracies were and the different lineages of Brazilian black belts and shit like that. And like going from organization, oh, this guy's in this league, this guy's in that league. And my buddy actually, the one that subscribed to Black Belt, he actually sent off $200, a $200 check to get the Jean-Jacques fucking like 3-tape series of beginning jiu-jitsu moves. And so we start watching these jiu-jitsu training tapes, and we would just move my coffee table out of the way, and me and my buddy would do jiu-jitsu on each other. And so I would work at the porn shop all day, and then all night I would practice jiu-jitsu with my buddy. And then
it's such a good life.
I started preaching. I started preaching yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, my life's always been, I've always made my own fun.
Yeah, what you just
I've never had any money,
like
but I've always made my own fun.
You know?
Yeah, it was cool. It's fun little life. But and this was all before I was anybody on the internet, which is weird. But so I would work at the porn shop all day, and then I would come home and we would do this. And I would go back to work, and I would have carpet burns on my face. I would have black eyes. I'd have fucked up lips from getting in rear face locks and shit.
I always
and
love
my friends
when
would be like,
porn guys got carpet burn all over his face.
People would come in and be like, dude, did you get into a car accident or a fight? I'd be like, dude, there's this new martial art called jiu-jitsu. It's badass.
Like, whatever kind of
I never
videos
did.
You're watching, I want them.
Yeah. I never did any sports in school. Like I fucked around like 8th grade. I did one season of like soccer, and I tried out for a basketball team. Why a short fat guy tried out for a basketball team, I'll never know. But I never successfully did any sports. So this was like a sport thing that I got into after high school that I was just all like, I'd never done anything like it before. It made me feel good. It made me get in shape. I started running so that I had more endurance for whenever I rolled jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And just like that first time you set in an arm bar and make somebody tap, you're hooked.
Oh, dude,
it's
a drug.
Absolutely. So I started this weird underground fight club. I know this sounds stupid. I was just telling you this the other day in private. I was like, the stories I tell sound like they're absolutely made up, but this is my real life. This is really me. And so I started this weird underground fight club where my friends would come over at night, and I got 2 or 3, 4 guys that were all into it. We made them watch the UFCs, that bag of tapes, and then my buddies' jiu-jitsu training tapes. And so we started getting all my buddies into jiu-jitsu. And what we would do is, since there were 4 or 5 of us, my apartment was so small, we couldn't train in my apartment anymore. So at night, once it got dark, we would all walk down to the park and go into it was like a park and a baseball field.
Dude, did me and you wind up rolling in that park one time?
Yes, that's what I'm getting at. The very first memory I have of you, and I have no idea why you were there. I don't know how you even showed up at my house. You showed up at my house one night when we were going to roll, and we all went. And you said you have a cousin or something that had a gym, and you were into jiu-jitsu. Is that true?
My uncle ran a big jiu-jitsu gym. Well, just a market. Like it started off as like a self-defense thing, and then went into like my uncle was Gracie certified, and like he went to the Gracie Academy, and back then came back here like Gracie certified, and he ran a big gym in this area.
He was the only one that did, right? He was the only jiu-jitsu dude in the whole area, right?
At that time, he was the only one that was a Gracie certified dude. That means that because there's a difference between jiu-jitsu and Gracie jiu-jitsu. And my uncle was certified to teach like legit Gracie jiu-jitsu.
And what that means is, so with Gracie jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu in general, you have to have your belt in the jiu-jitsu system. Your do they call it a master? Your master has to have been given his black belt by someone down this branch, down this chain of masters, down this chain of black belts. Only a black belt can give a black belt. And so when you open a gym, you have to be able to prove your lineage to go back to the Gracies or back to the Machados or whoever. And So, and your uncle was one of the only dudes that could
do that.
Went
and stayed at there was a Gracie Academy, and I think it was in California, and he went there for like, I don't mean like for a week. He went there for a long while, and came back. He went there. My uncle has a lot. I don't even know how many, but he's got multiple black belts, and then a lot of those black belts, he's like multiple degree black belt. You know what I mean? So he already had several.
Yeah, you get red stripes on them, right? It's like
on the tips
the red.
Of your,
number one is like
your belt.
Like the first belt is just, that's your first degree, and then you get a red stripe, and it's like second degree.
Second degree, yeah. And he went there and stayed for a long time, and got a black belt under the Gracie name or whatever.
And the only way to get a black belt is to tap a black belt, right? They won't. They'll never give you a black belt unless you tap a black belt.
I don't really know what all he had to do to get it. I just know that he came back here legitly certified to give out, like, to teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and that was a real big thing back then, because I mean the UFC was like right when it was kind of like starting to blow up, you know. Yep. And for him to, you know, his gym was a pretty cool place, man. At one time when I was a kid, it was probably like my favorite place to be when I was a little kid. Like not even a little kid, but up until I was in my like 16, 17-year-old, probably I spent a lot of time in his gym.
And that was such a unique thing. Like I want to stress how nobody knew what the hell that was.
No, I mean, honestly,
nobody.
Dude, because of who my uncle, I'm not going to name drop him because I'm just not, and me and him don't really see as eye to eye as we used to anymore in life. But I love my uncle to death, and a lot of the memories I got in my life from him are like unreplaceable, you know. But when I was a kid, dude, I met a lot of like I met Dan Severin when I was young. I met Hoist.
Bad motherfucker.
Yeah, the dude is the grizzly bear of a man. I met.
Do you ever watch his YouTube videos? He like wears a cowboy hat and has a big mustache, and he's just 100% misogyny all the time.
No, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
He's got like a beer in his hand, and he's sitting in a chair, and he just runs his mouth, and it's
100% misogyny all the time. Yeah,
all the time.
But I met a lot of I met Hoist Gracie. My uncle took me to a Gracie seminar in Chicago, and I got to meet him once. I got to meet Matt Hughes.
And meeting Hoist Gracie is literally like, if you're into jiu-jitsu, and if you were into jiu-jitsu in the 90s, he was the biggest rock star.
It would have been like meeting Elvis. Yeah, that's how it
would have literally been like meeting fucking Elvis Presley or the Beatles, because Hoist Gracie, his win in UFC 1 literally ignited jiu-jitsu worldwide. Nobody knew what jiu-jitsu was outside of Brazil until he won that tournament. And we could, you know, for insiders, yes, you can argue that the Gracies put that tournament together and they gave him a softball so that he would win to make jiu-jitsu look good. But fuck, he's still rock star.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I think it showed so like he went up against some dudes that just looked like if you had just looked at him standing there, you're gonna be like, he's gonna die. You know what I mean?
Just roided up monsters, tattooed head to toe, looking like they just got let out of jail. Probably had just gotten let out of jail at that time. There were no rules. There were no rules, dude. You could roid up. I mean, if you listen to
it was barbaric as hell back then, dude.
Yeah. Well, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name right now. Bald guy. Oh man. Boss Rutan. Boss Rutan tells some stories about literally injecting himself with painkiller into his arm. Like he's so injured that he can't feel his fingertips, and like injecting shit directly into his arm as his name is being announced. And walking out to the cage, hoping that his arm would stay numb long enough for him to win the fight.
I stood next to that dude one time. I didn't meet him, but I stood right by where we used to go to these I think it was called like Hook and Shoot, and it used to be in Indiana. It was like a little MMA thing that would go on in Indiana, and I used to go there with my uncle sometimes, and I was standing there one time after a fight, and he walked like straight past me and stopped for a minute. And I remember being like, "Holy crap!" You know what I mean? That's freaking
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boss Rutan was a bad motherfucker too.
Oh yeah. What they call El Guapo? Is that what they call him?
El Guapo. I don't know what it means.
Yeah. Just fucking open hand smack the life out of you, dude. You watch those old pancrase things he would do.
Pancrase, yeah. Pancrase was MMA before there was an MMA, and you could do all the grappling and all the submission stuff, but you couldn't punch people for whatever reason. You had to.
They like open palm like the life out of each other, and it almost sometimes seemed worse, you know.
And they did it in a ring instead of a cage. But anyway, we could talk about MMA for 20 years. We literally have 20 years of memories.
Yeah.
I still love MMA. Let's move on. So yeah, you showed up at my little fight club, and we rolled one time, and maybe it might have been multiple times. Did you come around a lot? All I remember is you came around. I don't remember if it was once or if you came around multiple times.
At least once. I know I went there, and I know I rolled with you, and I might have rolled with a different dude at one point too.
There was a bunch of us
out in that park, you know.
Yeah, there was we would do like round robins where it was literally MMA training. It was like jiu-jitsu training. We would all roll, and we would all take turns, or we'd have one guy that would have to do everybody.
Yeah, my brother-in-law, it's funny, but like he has the same thing where like him and some of his friends, like there wasn't like a place where they were from that was really teaching that stuff, so they just kind of got some I think he said like they might have come up with like a book or something that showed a bunch of these locks and different kinds of.
Yeah, there's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu book that my buddy had that book too.
And then they just started like going down in the basement or out in the field and just dirty working each other, you know?
Yeah, doing those locks and holds, and it's so like we said, you know, once you get your first lock in and make somebody tap, it's so addicting, and you just want to do it forever.
It's a very gratifying thing.
If it had been 10 years later, like if I was 10 years younger, I would be a professional jiu-jitsu player. Like I would have done my best to go to tournaments, and I would be belted.
Even just on like a health aspect, like even if you have no interest in doing it like competitively, it can just be like a daily exercise thing. It's just good for you overall, and I think it's really good for people even like mentally.
Yeah, it's low impact. You're not going to do a lot of damage to yourself. Like you're not going to hurt. Like it is joint manipulation, but as long as the people that you're rolling with are responsible, they're not going to hurt your joints.
As long as you're not rolling with like the shoot fighters from Brazil, where they're going to snap.
rip your arms off and shit. Anyway, so that's how we met. I don't know why. I don't know what you were doing there. Do you remember what you were doing there? You remember how you even showed up?
I remember being in that apartment that you had. I remember being there several times, but I don't remember how I would ever get. I don't know like why I would be there.
We must have had a friend in common.
We had to have known someone, but for some reason neither of us remember him or something.
So then that stops for whatever reason. I didn't quit messing with jiu-jitsu until like my buddy, the main guy that I rolled with, the reason we stopped the fight club was because he joined the Marines. He decided he needed to go be.
He joined a different fight club.
Yeah, he decided he needed to go legit.
Yeah,
and I did not follow him in that endeavor. I stayed at the porn shop, and then my life eventually evolved into making movies, which is what sort of has propelled the rest of my life.
And I remember when you started doing that too, because I remember it was a big deal around here. And I remember that like thinking that I like. There was like a time I know I even thought about contacting you to be like, hey man, you know, if there's ever anything I can do in those, I'd be interested in doing it. But it was just one of those things I never like did. And then time just moves and moves and moves, you know?
Well, there again, this is all early 2000s stuff. So when I started making movies, I believe I made my first short film before MySpace existed and before YouTube existed.
I remember
And then,
those, you having a like on MySpace. I remember there being a big, a pretty big hack movies following on MySpace when I
yeah, once MySpace got going, and I had already been like, then I established hack movies, and I had made my first feature film. We exploited MySpace for all it was worth. We started seeing indie bands that were like using robots to like spam the bulletin board and people's comments. You could literally use a robot to put your link to your YouTube videos and stuff in people's comments, and that was back when the people that were on MySpace reacted to their comments. Like, this was early social media, so when you would like, the engagement of any particular link was so much higher than anything you could imagine today.
Dude,
if you post a link on the internet today,
MySpace, I loved MySpace, honestly. Like,
yeah, we ended up growing. We had one page that had 50,000 fans, and then we had a secondary page that had 25,000 fans. So we had almost 80,000 fans between the two pages, and all I did was sell DVDs through PayPal mail order, and we sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those. That's why I was able to go on the convention circuit from selling DVDs, and
how
then
long
I
did
was
you
able
do
to.
that convention? How long did you run that convention circuit?
Well, for movies, I did conventions from 2006 to 2011. And then whenever I switched and started writing novels and started running my publishing house, I did that convention circuit from 2012 to 2000, like really balls out, 2012 to about 2015. And then sporadically ever since. I haven't gone hard for a few years.
Do you think you'll ever do that again with your with the comics?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the plan, I guess. The thing about the convention scene is once you commit to it, that's your whole life.
Yeah.
It takes so much prep to get ready for the convention, to drive to the convention, to set up, to sell all weekend, to tear down, to drive home, to recuperate from it's physically exhausting to go to do that, to drive. It's about, depending on the convention you go to, you're talking 16 hours in a vehicle in 3 days, and then 10 hours on the floor selling. And to me, that's the most exhausting thing, is talking to people over and over and over and over again, as you're trying to get them to buy your weird porno mags and
your butthole
and
comics.
movies, your butthole comics and butthole movies. But one of the things that this comic book has done for me, since it's a hack movies comic book, is it's allowed me to sort of resurrect hack movies. And people are more into hack movies today than they have been in 10 years. And it's got me wanting to take the movies back out on the circuit too.
It's because it's nostalgia now.
Yeah, and I'm introducing like brand new people that, Generation Z is so much more open to the kind of offensive shock humor that hack movies is, whereas the millennial generation, they came right after us, right after Gen X, and
it hurts their feelings.
It hurts their feelings so bad to be confronted by anything they don't like, that basically for their entire, from the time they were old enough to, teenagers old enough to start being into like underground art, alternative shit, till now they're almost 30. I haven't really been able to push this kind of stuff because they react so fucking poorly to it. But Gen Z, since they grew up around these idiots who are so fragile and can't handle any confrontation, Gen Z is just a generation of trolls, and they love to be provocative.
I think it makes us worse.
Yeah.
Like, to know that they're like someone's that sensitive. Like, it's like, oh, really? You know what I mean?
Well, that's how we were. Gen X were assholes.
Yeah.
And we love to piss people off. I mean, we're talking the Marilyn Manson, Howard Stern generation.
Yeah.
Before those guys became pussies. Uh-huh. I mean, we're talking about an era where the more you can make somebody cry, from your art, the better. Like that
Right.
was what Gen X was like, fueled by that.
Yeah.
And then the millennials put that fire out, and Gen Z is lighting it back up again and going, oh, because here's the thing about Gen X is when you're bullying little kids, it doesn't work, right?
No.
You can't be Gen X and bully and bully the millennials. That just makes us, we were bullying the older conservative generation.
Yeah.
Gen X was bullying.
The bully up, not down.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. When you slap around a little kid emotionally, you're like, you're a fucking asshole. People, but now that it's Gen Z, now that 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds are taking the piss out of millennials that are now in their 30s, that's fucking funny. Yeah. And so Gen Z is getting into hack movies, and it's firing me back up. It's firing up the old asshole in me, making me want to do. And that's what this comic book is all about. Doing these hack movies comics is all about pushing that provocative, just absolutely ridiculous shit. And I work with a bunch of guys that are like 18, 19, 20 years old. And I bring my comic book into work, dude, and they start flipping through it, and just watching the genuine laughter in them that I could never get those kind of laughs out of millennials. Millennials would be like, really? This is what you think's funny? You think this is edgy? This is this is on the internet, okay? If I wanted to see something like this, okay, I could just go on the internet. And that's all. Like, Gen Z has been raised in a completely censored internet. Like, Gen Z has to go through back channels to get to the cool shit.
Yeah.
Like to them, they're rebelling by looking, the YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all that. They censor so much that Gen Z feels like, well, that's our shit. And so I feel like I'm finally back to a point where my style of humor resonates with kids again, where it didn't resonate with kids for a long time. So when you say, like, do you want to go back out on the road and sell? Like, hell yeah, I do. I finally got my audience back.
Yeah,
I get another 10 years before the next generation comes along going, really, you really think this is funny?
Yeah, and by the time that one pans out, like, we'll probably be in a box, So
exactly.
We gotta seize the opportunity,
Right.
Because if every 10 years we flip flop in between, like, nothing hurts our feelings to everything hurts our feelings,
Exactly. So the only other thing I wanted to say about us meeting, you said that you had thought about contacting me. I have one more memory, and there's always this weird serendipity with hack movies. I've talked about it. Anybody who follows hack movies and like listens to my audio commentaries and stuff on the DVDs, they know this. There's so much weird coincidence and serendipity that comes along with hack movies that it almost feels like there's some weird butthole god in the universe that finds me very favorable as a person, as an artist, and I get a lot of.
I think it's just.
So the day, okay, so I'm doing the Dead Shit comic book, right? I'm doing the comic book adaptation of my 2007 film Dead Shit. 2007 2007. The day I shot the big. I needed a bunch of extras to be zombies for this big zombie scene, and what I mean by big zombie scene is I think 6 people showed up. There's 6 people in the zombie scene, but for me it was huge because we had to do makeup on 6 people, and I wanted it to be 60, but only 6 people showed up. And you might not remember this, but we were at Hit and Run. I don't even want to say that. We were at a convenience store in your town, and we were fueling up, getting gas, getting ready to go over and shoot our big zombie scene. And I saw you, and I hadn't seen you since the jiu-jitsu days. And you were like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Brad, dude, check it out. I'm getting ready to go shoot this big zombie scene for my movie." You were like, "A movie? That sounds cool. You're doing a horror movie?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm doing a horror movie, and I need zombie extras. Do you want to be in the movie?" And you were like, "Hell yeah." I was like, "Follow the caravan, bro. These 3 cars. We're heading over to the to the house where we're going to shoot this at, and we'll put you in the movie." And you were like, "Hell yeah." And so we get in the cars and we drive off, and you don't follow us.
Well, I wonder who I was with, because I don't drive.
You were with somebody, and you were all into. You were like, "Yeah, we're right behind you." And we took off, and we got to the house, and you weren't there.
Did we pass a Jack in the Box?
Yes.
There was probably like, oh, tacos. You know.
I think I said turn at the Jack in the Box in Alton.
I really don't even know if I remember that, but I'd love to know what made me not show up. But
Probably the dude you were with.
Probably. I don't have a license. Like I've never had a license, so it probably guaranteed on someone I was riding with having other plans. You know.
Yeah, he was like, fuck that. I got shit to do.
He's like, we're not gonna go make butthole movies.
Fuck a butthole. I don't like that guy.
It was probably some dude that was like, I want to go fishing, and then
yeah, or he was like, I don't like that Kevin dude. I know that guy.
Yeah,
fuck that guy.
That guy.
Like, people have not
butthole movies.
People have not liked me long before people didn't like me on the internet. Well, everybody in this town knows who I am.
It's like deal with this, motherfuckers. People hate me in real life. Think about
well, that's why it's never bothered me.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we were talking about earlier about people being scared to put their art out there. It's like, dude, I've been bullied since I was in junior high. I've had what I call a fuck you face since I was in junior high. For whatever reason, the way my face looks, dudes look at me and go, I don't fucking like you. And I'm like, I haven't done anything yet.
Just want to smash my fist into that thing. Like when
exactly.
They it's just like,
I'm like, I haven't even done anything yet. Yes, I have a punchable face.
Just got a punchable face.
Before I do anything, people are ready to not like me. So and lots of people in this town didn't like me long before I got on the internet. People didn't like me there.
Yeah, I mean, I always like I grew up after I stopped doing like jujitsu all the time. I really got into I skateboarded heavily when I was young. It was always something I did. And then I got really big into like the punk rock music. I played in bands a lot when I was younger, and even up till recently, I played in some bands. And the punk rock mentality is just kind of built to give the middle finger. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I really think that like if I hadn't grew up as kind of like entrenched in punk rock as I did, I really think it made me like in today's world, like it made me a better person. I really believe that because punk rock's kind of all about like don't step on me and I won't step on you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
right.
I just want everyone to do what they want, and then also just kind of accept that what someone else wants might not be what you want, and that's cool too, you know.
And that's a real Gen X thing. I mean, we all sort of we grew up with that, like do whatever, we don't like. It's an Gen X is an individualist generation, where we're far more concerned about being individuals and allowing the space of other individuals to be themselves than the millennial generation is so stuck on labels and acting within their labels. Like they're so controlled by labels and the expectations of how they're supposed to act based on any number of labels that they put on themselves. And that goes for any side of the sort of culture divide. They're all like that. And we just weren't like that, man. We were, and I miss that. I miss that about pop culture, and even about like renegade culture, even about subcultures and counterculture. Counterculture used to be about defining individualism, and counterculture today isn't about individualism at all. Counterculture today is about fighting the ghosts of dead conservatives. They're long gone. Like the people, the Christian conservative, the Christian coalition from the 70s and 80s and early 90s, they're long gone. They have no control over the culture. Our culture is controlled by Netflix. And Barack Obama bought an interest in Netflix. I'm not trying to get political. I'm just stating the facts. It's like, you're calling that counterculture, bro. Literally, a president of the United States, a former president of the United States, owns an interest in the biggest, in what's considered counterculture. It's to me, counterculture has become mainstream. Yeah. The mainstreaming of counterculture happened with the millennial generation, and so
I think that happens a lot. Like something starts off anything that's really cool starts off as underground and then slowly like works its way to to the top, kind of. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
the thing that infuriates me about millennials is they still pretend like that's like it's something. Like I watched this guy. He's an underground film dude, and he's into he like does these retrospective of trauma movies, and trauma
yeah,
movies are they're fantastic. Like I'm friends with the trauma guys, and I have people that have been in my films are in traumas movies, and there's really like a very incestuous relationship between hack movies and trauma, and I wouldn't be who I am today without Lloyd Kaufman and the Toxic Avenger and trauma movies. But this kid that's like he's like crowdfunding these retrospectives of trauma movies, and he's crowdfunding a lot of money, and he's really becoming successful with these retrospective documentaries that he's doing on trauma movies. And I started following him on Twitter because of that. I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man! I want to check some of these out." And then I noticed that every day he tries to tweet something stupid at Donald Trump. And love or hate Donald Trump. Again, I'm not trying to get political or take a side, but to think that it's punk rock or counterculture to tweet bad things at the most hated president in history, there's nothing dangerous about that.
no, I mean, if you get on,
There's nothing dangerous about it. What is he in danger of by doing? Like he's not rebelling against anything. Like that, the ladies on The View, you know, morning TV, morning, old lady television does the same thing. Like this guy is like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, cattle is just always in a line. It doesn't always mean
yeah,
where the line's headed. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like
Exactly.
if you can be doing, like the same thing that you're doing over and over. It's the repetitiveness, just follow the leader kind of mentality,
Yeah. But
But
this is supposed to be, this is supposed to be counterculture. It's supposed to be counter to that. It's supposed to say we don't follow the mainstream. We don't follow the leader. We're individualists, but
I think it's
that's just
also skewed anymore that like nobody really even like it's just
yeah.
kind of like what are we mad at again?
Yeah. Right.
What are we mad at? Anything. We're mad at everything.
Everything, everybody. Anyway, I thought it was ironic, that serendipity that literally the last time we spoke before we met up on Instagram recently was the day I was shooting Dead Shit, and now I'm doing the Dead Shit comic book 10 years later. It's like, oh, I won't see that guy again for 10 years until I start making the comic book version of this movie.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it's weird, dude. Cause I mean, we're not. I guess we're not like old men yet, but we're not young men yet either. Yet anymore, I guess. But
we're getting there.
We're getting there, yeah. But it's like I don't know, dude. I don't really like the idea of when I was younger. I would be like, there's no way. When I'm 25 years old, just bullet me, dude. I'll be done.
Yeah.
But I don't know, dude. As I like get older, I find myself happier and happier with just like existence. You know what I mean?
I know.
You kind of find like you kind of just find some kind of like peace, and just it's easier. It gets easier and easier for me to just be who I am.
Absolutely.
I don't really worry. If someone doesn't like I pretty much know nothing I'm doing harming anybody. So like it or
Right.
not, fuck off. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, if nothing I'm doing is causing anybody any harm, then eat shit if you don't like it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's one of the great things about doing this comic book is I feel like I'm doing it for myself. I know I don't owe it to anybody. I've never done it before, so there's no expectations. I just get to sit here every day and draw this stupid shit.
Yeah.
And it's so calming, and I feel like it's so weird because I thought my career was over. I thought I'd been blacklisted from everything and I was never going to sell another thing for the rest of my life. And today I'm able to do art that's more representative of who I am and what I love than I've ever done before. Honestly, as weird as that might sound, this is the most pure Kevin Strange has ever been. Because even with
when I started this, like I said, this whole comic that I'm making came out of a weird idea of a puppet show that I did on YouTube, and I think I only did 4 or 5 of them, and none of them are like they're in between like 5 and 10 minutes long a piece, but at the point I started making those, I wasn't really doing anything. If I don't do something creatively, I always get weird. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I honestly get miserable, and I had hit this point where I wasn't doing anything at all. I was playing video games constantly, dude.
And that ain't good, brother.
Like I'm a rank 660 something on GTA 5, and like I'm pretty sure that like when you hit rank 6, whatever's next, you have to make a noose. That's like the and I just found myself being, dude, I'd get online, and then all I'd do is like I'd get on there, and then somebody'd start like that's like some of the most toxic environment on earth is a GTA 5 server, you know?
Yeah.
It is just, dude, you'll wind up saying shit to people that you're like, what in the fuck just came out of my mouth, you know? Like, it's bad, man. Like my wife would look over at me and be like, I used to think I loved you, you know? And then I'd be like, I don't know who I am anymore. You know?
I don't know who I am anymore.
I don't know what happened, you know? But it really is, like, I think that some of it, like, I guess it depends on how, you know, like you're wired. But for me, screaming obscenities at people online all day long doesn't lead to like a lot of happiness afterwards. You know what I mean?
No, well, what it is it's addicting. It's created as an addiction.
But I also
deliberate.
feel like it kills the creative part of your mind.
In the same way that porn kills your sex drive. They're deliberately
it does something, and it like so when I got away from video games, I was trying to like kind of, you know, like scale back my gameplay, and I started needing something to do, but also like I had no friend circle almost at all anymore. So I started coming up. I like had this idea to make this weird puppet show that was kind of based around mental illness a little bit. And I came up with these couple characters, and I watched some tutorials about how to make puppets, and we made a couple puppets, and then I made a couple backdrop sets, and we just started shooting these weird little puppet shows, and I had a ton. Like the first one I did was just like absolute, like the mouths don't line up with any of the words, and it's just like a slaughterhouse fest, you know. But then what I'd do is I'd make one, and then I'd look at it and be like, all right, these are the things that I'm unhappy with. And then the next one, I'd try to fix those things, you know? And
exactly.
And by the time I made the last one, dude, I was like pretty happy with it. And it was pretty, I was getting more and more comfortable with it. But I started wanting to do things in it that were just like unachievable for me to pull off on a puppet show in my living room, you know?
Yeah, you were telling me the storyline of Riggs, and that's, you know, you could do that with green screen and some CGI and stuff like that, but it would be very ambitious.
Yeah,
to tell the story you're telling with the comic book, to tell that in an actual live action puppet show, it would be quite an endeavor.
Yeah, so that's when I started thinking about a comic book. I was like, man, I could just do anything and everything I wanted, you know? And so I did change a little bit of some of just like the character mentality and stuff like that, and just a little bitty bit, but for the most part, it's just 100% kind of still just like an ongoing from, like in the story, the Junior, who's like a 12-year-old kid, he's kind of like, he comes from like his home life is like loving, but very, I guess you could say like unstable, you know? But he keeps getting in trouble at school, and his grandpa's going to come and straighten him out, you know? And that kind of comes from when I was a kid. I'd get in trouble at different times, and at one point in my life, my dad wasn't in this area. He had moved out of state. So when I'd get in trouble, I'd always have to deal with one of my uncles coming. If my uncle was on his way over here, I'd been a little bastard. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I kind of thought about, you know, like this dude that has to have this other male figure come in and whip him into shape whenever he's, you know, needing it. And but then what happens in the story is that when the grandpa's on his way there, he gets abducted by aliens.
The grandpa gets abducted by aliens.
The grandpa gets abducted by aliens, and then Riggs, who was like this. Riggs is actually right here. This is the puppet that I made. I don't know if you can see that. This is what Riggs started off. This is what he started off as, which is I bought this rat at Walmart during Halloween, and then this fur is off an old like throw pillow, and I painted him all weird, and then put this little. He's got like it's actually a wire hanger that goes up his spinal cord, and so you can move his mouth, kind of move him around. But that he was just like he's supposed to be like a kind of like the voice inside of Junior's head, you know. And I felt like because like you know how like sometimes you have I think everybody has it. You'll have like something in your head, and it's not always the most positive influence.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so I felt like a dead rat would be the perfect kind of like symbolism for the voice that says things in my head that I have to be like, "Are you insane, man? Quit!" You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Quit thinking that, dude. You know, it's sewer shit. So I but then when I started drawing it, I kind of made Riggs he's not really a dead rat. He's just a little bit more of a kind of like a cartoony looking. I don't even know if you could guarantee he looks like a rat. He just looks like a weird little bug-eyed thing. But so that's pretty much all it is, dude. It's just like this. If you want, the puppet shows end with them saying that the grandpa's on his way, but like you can tell he's not showing up. And then it just ends that way, and then I guess it'll kind of pick up like where the next video would pick up would be this issue of the comic book, pretty much. And,
do you have your tablet there where you can show any of the?
Yeah, I do somewhere.
Pages.
I have this tablet right here. I have a ton of concept art for this thing that I'm thinking about. I think I'm going to do an Indiegogo campaign for this in the next. I might start it in the next couple of days, but what I'm thinking about doing is making a little book also of just all my concept art for this thing, and then that could be like a cool little, I guess, like extra, you know.
You could even throw them in the back of the comic if you wanted to.
Oh, the comic, yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out how I would do it, but because I have a lot of different. Because just like the whole character design and everything, because I took them from puppets to this, and it took me a while to get to where I liked how they looked, you know?
Right.
So, hold on, bro.
I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm trying to figure out what this is.
What?
Right here. I'm trying to figure out what this is. Sometimes when I scribble down these this stuff on this page, every once in a while I'm like,
then you have to,
I don't even
dude,
know
I'm terrible about that when I'm writing, because like I'm writing down ideas for my script. You know, I'll just start scribbling when it's like things I don't want to forget, and then I have to go back and be like, I don't know what this means. You know, I got this series of hash marks right here that I would love to know what I was trying to remember.
Exactly.
So here's I don't know if you can see that at all or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's some page. That's actually the first page of the comic book, and like what winds up happening here is Junior's he's in like a junior high gym class, and he's checking out a chick in his gym. Her name's Wendy Wiggles, and the PE teacher tells him it's time to run sprints, and he's not paying attention because he's watching, as he would say, Wendy Wiggles jiggles. And he winds up colliding with another student, and in the mix of them falling to the ground, he accidentally bites the kid on the penis, like did a collision. And the principal, who's pretty irritated about all of it, he says that Junior bit his penis off, but Junior calmly explains that he didn't bite it off; it was still dangling there. And he pretty much gets sent home, and then once he gets home, his mom, you know, tells him to wait in his room, and his grandpa's gonna get there. And then like he's just playing video games, waiting in his bedroom, and then his grandpa's on his way and winds up getting abducted. And then it just goes pretty much off the rails from there. They Riggs always has this weird, almost like MacGyver quality where which Riggs is Junior, but in the comics it's always depicted that Riggs does it. But he makes this weird helmet out of an old football helmet and a microwave and a bunch of different shit that they're gonna put on and help. He says it will move him, like it will help him find the grandpa, because Riggs thinks he was abducted by aliens. And then once they put the helmet on, it pretty much they argue about it, and then they wind up plugging it in, and it fries him and pulls him into a different galaxy, which they wind up finding out that he was abducted, and it leads them to actually finding him. But there's a bunch of crazy stuff that goes on in between, and there's a bunch of they wind up on a planet called Gardonia 5 that's like ran by these alien drunken garden gnomes. It's like a garden gnome infested. Here's a couple of the gnomes. It's like a garden gnome alien infested planet, and they piss rainbows and they vomit all the time, and they're just a real good group of dudes. But
just a real good group of dudes.
They the gnomes want to eat them, so they have to fight their way out of this big conference that they wind up at, and then they wind up loose on the streets of Gardonia, and it's a pretty good little jamboree time that they have. So, but I'm 5 pages away from it being done, and then we'll see what happens after that. I already have scripts wrote for 2 and a 3rd issue, which I think they're just going to be, each one of them is going to be like its own little adventure. There'll be things that maybe, like, it'll always be the same base characters, but like you probably won't see the gnomes in the 2nd issue, you know?
Right.
As it goes on, maybe, you know, things could always tie back in, but it won't be the kind of thing where, you know, it's directly a further of this story. It will be the next comic book will be set that they wake up and then some new crazy thing happens, pretty much.
Yeah, each one is a standalone adventure.
Yeah. So
it's looking pretty cool, my friend. Like the looking at it on a screen doesn't do it justice. This comic book, I've never seen anything like it. It looks cool. It looks super unique to Brad's style. I've never seen a style like Brad's style before, and the comic is a really good representation of Brad's style. And so if you're into weird shit, if you're not afraid to be offended, if you're not afraid of really potty humor, of really sophomoric, say the reason why we're doing a show together is I think that our, like, my stoner comedy and his weird awkward comedy, they go together like fucking milk and cheese, man, like a fine wine,
like peas and carrots.
If you like weird shit, we'll both provide you with weird underground comics, but 2 completely unique and distinct styles of weird offensive underground comics. And we're really, you see me sitting here. Oh, I've got your screen locked while you're showing that. You see me working on dead shit here, and you see and Brad will be working on his Riggs comic, and we'll launch his Indiegogo here in a few days, and we'll watch the progress of that, and we'll see how he does with that as we go. And we're just going to work and hang out. Like, this episode was sort of formal, and it was almost like an interview, but in future episodes, we're just going to hang out, chill, and draw our comics and talk about life and talk about our process and everything else. There's still plenty to talk about, and once we say everything we have to say, we still have cool comics to draw.
Right.
And we're gonna bring people in. We'll have more people that'll come in, more artists and creative types that'll pop in. We'll talk to them about their process and how they do things. But mostly, we're all just gonna hang out and draw comics. And so if you like to draw, whether you're doing sequential comics or whether you just like to draw buttholes, standalone buttholes and buttholes with a story,
or maybe you're a butthole portrait artist,
Maybe you draw realistic buttholes, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Realistic butthole artist in all the land,
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I don't think there's a prettier part of the female anatomy than a female butthole. Female butthole
is. If you're gonna do equality, it has to be just anatomy, Kevin. Like a quality.
Listen, the difference between a male butthole that has to take like violent, aggressive, big, meaty shits, and a dainty, petite female butthole that mostly poops out, plant
I assume
food.
is some sort of like candy or
Yeah, just candy and
something.
cute.
I think it's those little like those Valentine's Day hearts.
Have you ever ruined a butthole? I've accidentally ruined a girl's butthole before.
Oh, I was just gonna say my own a couple times.
No, I've accidentally created stretch marks that didn't exist.
Oh, dude, I've seen online like where they can flip inside out. Have you ever saw that?
I've never done that. Thank God.
Oh, well, then you haven't truly ruined one, then.
No, I haven't flipped. No, I haven't inverted a butthole. I've never.
It looks like
I don't have.
It's like you got a big tube sock made out of meat hanging out of your butt.
That's not something I want to see.
No.
It's like what are those? Is there's those tube worms in the ocean.
Yeah.
Come on.
Exactly. Fucking.
See, my penis isn't big enough to cause that kind of damage.
No.
On that note, gang, I think we've exhausted our show. I really want to we did like an hour and a half. This was an intro show. I want to do just an hour a day because we still have to get our work done. Like normally by this time in the day I'd have 3 pages done. I've done half a page, and it's only 2 figures. This is 15 minutes worth of last hour and a half. So I want to get to work and I want to crank out my page. I know, Brad, you're down to the last 5.
What?
You're down to the last 5 pages.
I got 5 pages, yeah, and then
you're almost done.
Then I'm.
Have you thought about your cover yet? Have you thought about your cover yet?
A little bit. I started sketching out some stuff the other day. Just some loose ideas. I got some stuff going on. I like everything inside of me. Like when I'm done, part of me wants to just be like, just use a picture from the comic and be done. You know what I mean? But I think I am gonna draw a cover. I'm not completely sure what it will. This is like the thing I'm messing with right here. I don't know if you can see that or not at all. Probably not. But it'll just be it's this big. It's called a lump gore. He's like the leader of the alien gnomes.
Yeah, you're.
And he might be on the cover. I'll
you were
show you.
For lump gore.
A lump gore, LUMPGORE. Here he is. Like here he is in the comic. Wait, where did that go? That's what he.
Can you
see
hear
that big?
me?
Huh?
Dropping out.
Yeah, we're cutting out.
All right. Well, we'll just call that the end then, since we're having technical difficulties. We'll show off the lump gore and the possible cover next time. And the thing that I love about watching other guys do their work on YouTube is before this kind of situation, you could never see a comic book artist like struggling with what he was going to put on the cover of his comic. Here in a few weeks, we're going to see that cover done. Whatever you decide to use, it's going to be slapped on there. We're going to see your Indiegogo. We're going to see those comic books in your hand. We're going to see you shipping them out to your fans. And to me, that is just the coolest thing. Is watching the creation and construction of these comic books.
And I like the fact that it shows that not like I think a lot of people get lost in the fact that like they start having a hard time with parts of it. You know what I mean? And it's normal to have a hard time with different stuff that you're doing. You just kind of got to work through it,
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, good times, and we'll do it again soon.
Can you hear me? Oh. And he dropped out. All right. Episode 1 of the Strangeville Stinkshow. We'll see you guys next time. Till then, stay strange.